Next stage inside the life cycle of a midge, or Chironomid as scientifically known to most of the general public, is once it gets from a larva stage, it goes to pupa. Pupa has a defined way of where they live in the water column and all the rest, but it is probably 80% of a trout's diet in most Stillwater lakes. So, being that said, this is probably a very popular pattern. With most patterns, they come in a multitude of colors. What I found out for the California area is that this particular fly is going to have a gold bead with an olive body and a gold wire. Now, it's very simple in the way that I tie it, but very methodical at the same time, and you'll find out when I start getting into it. But what I use is a 2457 hook, either in a size 16 or size 14. I'm also using 8/0 thread. Most people think that's too small, but it helps define and make the contours of the fly a lot smoother. And if I make mistakes, I can cover it up with it as well. The other thing that I use is the ultra wire in a small. It helps me to be able to define the ribs on what the pupa pattern is actually going to look like. So I'll get started. The first thing that you have to do is we got to get the bead on the hook itself. So what I do is, down the bottom, I wet my finger, and I actually have it so where I'm going to thread it through, it's real easy to put the bead on. Okay, so we're going to get the bead on there. And then it's kind of a methodical way I do it, but I try and what you'll see with most pupa patterns is that it almost looks like a long cylindrical snow cone. So for me to be able to build up that area, I'll start off with a certain amount of strokes going here and there and back and forth in order to build it up. And what that allows me to do is have a smoother contour once I finish the fly off. So starting off, take it straight right where the bead's at, and I take it 10 wraps. Now, you notice the same thing that I did earlier, but I use the thread or the tag end of the thread in order to be able to wrap everything side by side, so that way I have a smooth contour. Now, what I do is I take that same 10 wraps and I go right back over it side by side back to the head of the fly. Okay. I do the same thing coming across again. Now, this is purely just to build up the head portion of the pupa fly itself. Okay. And I go back one more time. So now I have basically a base pronounced right there to help me out. Going back down, hit my 10 strides, then I go 10 more.
309. 309 for the reel.
It's a little bit bulky right there. It's not real even, so what I do is I take it back all the way now, 20 wraps all the way back up to the bead head.
Lay it back forward so it's out of the way.
What do you think about that one as compared to that 4,200, say 5 or 6 stripes?
I put them both on.
You know what I like?
Even the tips of it.
And I like the way it's sealed.
This mayfly, marble stage, has 3 tails.
Okay, now that I have that kind of buildup and there's a little contour there, then I go side by side all the way down to the end of the hook. With the size 14, it's typically about 40 wraps that I do side by side all the way down. So we start. Okay, so now that sets me up with straight body cover and all the rest. And it's now starting to take a little bit of shape as to the contour of the fly itself. With the gold wire,
Tips at the bend, finger at the eye.
what I do is, in order to keep a perfect round contour, I could tie the wire up at the top and use this as a gauge, but I purposely don't do that. In the bottom of a pupa pattern itself, or the actual pupas that are in the water, in the bottom of the tail, it actually starts to get larger. Now, what I end up doing with the wire, since there's a section on the back of a midge that actually starts to get larger, I slide this over one thread, stop it right where it starts to get covered, and take 5 wraps with it, side by side. So now I have my wire put in. What I do now is I work my way back side by side all the way up until I come to the end of the fly again.
Seems like a lot of work.
I'll tell you what, if I didn't have the magnifying glass, there is no way I could do this.
Both adults,
Let us know you don't need to
big guys, huge.
You like the silver color? Yes, sir. They were all, I was wondering if you got, they were all rubber band and rubber turn. I didn't see it. So you got one there.
Early season, alligators are dark.
No, that was, yeah.
Okay, one thing you have to watch out for is sometimes the bead will get off center. So before you start the next step, make sure that the bead is back down. What ends up happening is sometimes the thread will get pushed underneath it where the bead will sit offset. So once you put it back into place, now you have something that doesn't look awkward when you're actually trying to tie, so your symmetry stays the same all the way through. Okay? What I do now is I take the wire, I start from the bottom. Typically with most midges in the water, and I'm kind of anal about that, but the pictures that we've taken in the past and the specimens that I have always have anywhere between 6 and 7 ribs. So on all of my flies, I tie it with them. Most production flies, you're going to see anywhere between 4 and 5 ribs. So it makes it a little bit more unique as to what I tie. There's no magic recipe for it, but what you're trying to do is keep it as even as possible all the way through while you're wrapping. So I don't have anything that helps me to keep that except for the portion of what my eyes are seeing. So I take it at an angle. I start my first wrap.
Yeah. You use actual, you dub it. You put it on nail, you're small pain. Getting it off the nail. Usually it just gets started. But it works pretty well. It's a little bit more systematic. Now you find the 2 that you want to fail.
With this one, because it's a size 14, I am actually going to make 7 wraps. And if you look at where the last 2 wraps goes, if you looked at the way that I contoured it earlier, it hits those 10 wrap areas right where there's a gap. So now it fills it in where now all of a sudden it becomes very, very smooth all the way through as far as contour goes. Take the thread.
You get in there like July,
Cinch it down, and then what I do is I don't cut the wire, but I actually start to move the wire back and forth where it breaks itself. Okay? A lot of times you don't have a scissor small enough to be able to cut that off. Now, going back down to finish it off, build up the head area just a little bit. Take it right back down to where my first wrap is, first rib. And then from there I go to finish it. What I do is I take about 10 to 12 wraps, but the same thing is I go side by side all the way back up. So it starts.
The reason I'm asking is because
I'm gonna go watch them tie. Chat.
their bodies become elongated.
fishing,
I wrap it all the way until the thread comes just about flush with the width of the bead. So you now have a smoothness going on. Finish it off. What I do is I douse the entire fly.
a couple of guys with the club, they said, well, You do something like a whole
And what that adds is a consistency of color to it, but at the same time it adds durability to the fly as well.
Which one? You experimented to get one that'll work. This one works pretty well.
That's when I cast
It's been a record.
It was